Welcome to Bible Bites. I'm Pastor Dan. We are reading through the Bible one small bite at a time. Today we are picking up in Matthew verse 18. So let's begin reading. While Jesus was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, My daughter has just died, but come lay your hands on her, and she will live. So you can read the previous verses to figure out, what Jesus was saying in the context of this. But as he was teaching this ruler, this is probably a local governing ruler, right? Perhaps just maybe even a ruler of a synagogue or something. But he held likely an official position of some way. His authority and position is recognized, so it calls him a ruler. And he kneels before Jesus. So we know that is an act of humility. That's an act of showing someone honor. And that's what this ruler was doing, even though Jesus really held no position, right? So the man explains his concern to Jesus, right? His circumstance, his situation. His daughter has died. But he believes that death is not the end. Not when Jesus is around, right? And so he believes Jesus is going to do something and can do something. So it says, Jesus rose and followed him with his disciples. So Jesus taking his disciples with him. And behold, a woman who suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him, touched the fringe of his garments. For she said to herself, if I only touch his garments, I will be made well. So on his way to this man's house, this woman in the crowd touches his clothes, thinking that if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. I can be made well. And we can only imagine that what this woman has suffered in her 12 years, probably consulting every medical remedy that she could, doctors, medicines, you name it. And she's come to the end of this, but she has a great faith, just believing that she just needs to touch Jesus. And Jesus recognizes this faith because he actually says to her, because you've come to me with this kind of faith, you are well. And it says, instantly the woman was made well. Wow, okay. Jesus' power over sickness. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house, and he saw the flute players in the crowd making a commotion, he said, Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed at him. So Jesus encounters these flute players and the crowd making a commotion. Now, my understanding is that in those days, you actually could hire mourners, or maybe they would just come out and they were professional mourners. They would come out and mourn when someone died. They expected to be paid, I'm sure, but that seems way weird to us. We have different culture today, but back then there was like these professional mourners who would play instruments. They would pronounce loud laments and so forth. And Jesus is encountering them, of course, and the crowd who's just gathering around, right? This is probably a young gal, and it's a big deal. She died, right? And if this ruler has notoriety, it's a big deal then that his daughter died. She was probably also somewhat well known. So Jesus tells them to go away, right? He says the girl is dead but not sleeping. Now Jesus is not saying that she hasn't died. Rather, Jesus is saying that death is not permanent, right? Jesus knows what he's about to do. And the crowds laughed at him because they believe and know that she's dead, right? The Father believes that, the crowds believe that, the disciples believe that. So Jesus is not doubting them. He's just saying that, hey, death is not an end when it comes to me. So, of course, they laughed at him. They thought it was ridiculous. But when the crowd had been put aside, Jesus went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And then, of course, reports of this went throughout that district. And you could imagine why. right? Jesus raised this girl from the dead. Now, I realize people could, and I'm sure some did, dismiss this as not being a miracle at all. Just was by coincidence, this girl had passed out or whatever, and Jesus just happened to be there and woke her up. Well, that's certainly not the way at all that the biblical authors understood it. Obviously, the crowds didn't understand it like that. They're thinking this is crazy. Something this miracle just happened, and this is how in part how Jesus, grew in some notoriety. It certainly wasn't Jesus' goal. In fact, oftentimes he would do his miracles as quietly as he could, not wanting to simply gain attention of men. But this shows the authority and power of Jesus. Also shows his compassion on people, doesn't it? It just shows his real compassion. Just how he responded to this woman calling her daughter, how he responded to this woman who had died by taking her by the hand. So God's character is compassionate, and it also shows that Jesus wants us to come to him in faith, right? Faith is when we really trust in someone. So we really believe who Jesus said he is, and that he has power and authority over all things. Just who he is, who he says he is, and we can have absolute trust in him. So Jesus looks for that in our lives. All right, so we will pick up continuing in chapter 9 in our next video, and we'll see you then.